Let's talk about the White Lotus season 2, episode 7. We're talking about the end. We're talking about everything and all the good stuff about it. So if you're just joining us, this is we tried to do the stream earlier, but I had to fix it up a bit. So everything should be good to go. We're just gonna check and see if the audio is good. And yeah, we're good. We're good. We're good. Audio and all of that. So what a finale, what an ending. I didn't start covering the show, even though I started watching it as soon as it started, but I started covering the show around the halfway point of the season. So I did want to talk more about everything else that happened from the beginning to the end. So I'm going to do a whole video on that. Right now, we're just discussing the episode 7, the finale, and all of that. This will be uploaded again as a video. So if you missed this live or anything, we're still going to be having this video up. So I'm just trying to fix my microphone because it's like acting really weird on me. But yeah, everybody, what did everybody think about the finale? I already made an Annie explain, but I do want to talk a little bit more about some of the things that we saw. Specifically, I think the whole thing that happened at the end was unexpected. So I'm gonna be talking full spoilers here. If you have not watched the newest episode and the finale and all of that, this is your time to go and watch that. Check it out for yourself. But yeah, we're just gonna go ahead and talk, and I'm just gonna go ahead and go from the beginning of the episode all the way to the end. And first and foremost, we have to talk about Harper. We have to talk about Ethan, Cameron, and Daphne. That whole like I was gonna say love triangle. It sort of felt like a mess of things right there, right? Ethan definitely by this episode was done with everything. He was already like sort of pushed to the limits by his own mind, like sort of like toying with him and him thinking, did Harper do something? Did Harper didn't do anything? Like what is going on here? Is Cameron out to get me? That was the biggest thing that Ethan was definitely wrestling with during the whole final like 3 episodes. And in this last episode, when we finally saw Ethan just completely break down, confront Harper, and just really try to get to the root of everything, we saw an Ethan we had not seen before, and one I wasn't expecting to see, especially at the beginning of the season when we saw Ethan was a very different person than how he was by the end of the vacation. And I thought that was a very good way to really develop his character by the end of it, because he definitely has come into his own. He's finally confronted Cameron, and it sort of feels like a bunch of animosity that had been building for Cameron was finally let go by Ethan. And I think that was a good way to really develop his character as well, because I think that once he found out that Cameron was indeed trying to make a move on Harper, that's when Ethan completely lost all like everything and was just like, this guy, I'm done with his bullshit. I'm gonna go after him, and that's that. So I really did enjoy that confrontation that happened after Harper sort of told Ethan, yeah, he tried to kiss me and all of this. Even though Ethan doesn't believe it was just a kiss by the end of it, I still think that his confrontation towards Cameron was indeed the way that Ethan had to handle things if he was going to ever feel better or just really get out of the situation he was in. I also found it interesting with him and Daphne having this little like thing, whatever they did end up having in that little remote island that they went to during the episode was an interesting way as well, because Daphne from the beginning of the season all the way up until the end had been saying that her and Cameron have this relationship where if one or the other starts to feel like the victim, more so it's always Daphne who's always the victim of things that Cameron does. She finds a way to make herself not feel like that victim anymore and sort of take control and reins of the situation. And I think when Ethan went to her and told her about what he suspected happened with Cameron and Harper, that's why she decided, you know what, Ethan, you and me, let's take control of the situation. Let's hold on to the reins and let's just handle this as like we should. So I think that was an interesting part about the whole episode right there, and really made it an interesting dilemma by the end of it, as we see both of the couples having dinner and everything. Like nothing ever really happened. Like Ethan and Cameron weren't just like drowning and fighting each other in the beach a couple of hours before until a tourist had to come and stop that. Or like Daphne and Ethan didn't venture off to do something, or did Cameron and Harper do anything? That's a big question I think that is also left for the viewer to interpret, is did Harper do anything with Cameron? One would assume that she probably didn't, because she pretty much hates his guts, so I don't know if she really did. I feel like maybe it was just all up into a kiss and that was it. But you know, it's up to the viewer to interpret that. We then have the story with Alby and Lucia. Lucia, of course, asked Alby for 50,000 euros in order to escape the situation that she was in, and Alby ultimately went to his father Dominic to ask for this money, and sort of made Dominic do it because he was like, if you do this for me, I'll do something for you and mom, where I'll talk to mom, put in a good word for you. I'll do something for you. And it pretty much makes Dominic sort of be like, yeah, this is something I need right now. Even though at first he's a little hesitant, he ultimately does decide to go ahead and do this for Alby because he does want that relationship with the mom back, and he is trying to get sort of back into that good grace with her. At the end of it all, Dominic does give the money to Lucia's bank account. Lucia and Alby sort of have this celebration, but it's cut short by the next morning when Lucia just gets out of Alvy's life as Alby leaves and sort of makes Alby realize that I think I was played. So I think that was an interesting turn of events for Alby and the whole Lucia thing. However, on the other side of things, Dominic does able to get like a little bit of a phone call with Alvy's mother, his ex-wife, and it sort of seems like things can be sort of repaired as they both say, "Hey, maybe once we get back to United States, we can have a little conversation." And it sort of seems that's the way it's gonna go. So I thought that was a very interesting story right there. I think the whole thing with Alby, his father, grandfather, the three generations of men, and sort of how they view women, life, and everything. It sort of all is so different from one another, but at the same time, it sort of is the same root. And I think we see that in the airport scene when they're both, well, all three of them are looking at that young woman at the airport. It really shows that even though they are three generations and different in aspects, at the same time, they're the same. So I thought that was an interesting way to put that whole thing right there. So overall, I think that story wrapped up great. I think that it really showed hypocrisies from all of the sides as well as the similarities, and it was definitely interesting. Now let's get to the big part of this episode, which of course was Tanya, Tanya, Tanya. Who would have thought, right? And I never would have expected this because I expected Tanya to be the recurring guest in all of the White Lotus. Whenever they would make a new one, Tanya was always going to be there. Of course, we do have a season 3 on the way, and season 3 is yet to be named what it will be or what's going to happen or who's going to be in it. But I don't think Tanya's going to be in it, as we know, because of course she is the body that Daphne finds at the end of the series. So eventually we did realize that Greg was behind all of this, the whole like thing with Tanya meeting the gays and going out with them and all of that. And that was because Jack also led us on to knowing that Quentin was actually using him to keep Portia busy while they went ahead and did whatever they were going to do to Tanya. Tanya, of course, finds this out after Portia calls her, tells her what's happening, and she starts to really see that there is something fishy and dark going on here. So Tanya decides that the best way to handle this is to sort of try and take the control of the situation. Eventually, once the guy who she actually had a night with the other night comes onto the yacht to supposedly take her back to her hotel room, we then see that there is a bigger plan to pretty much kill her, and that is because the prenup that she has with Greg doesn't allow Greg to have any of the money unless Tanya actually dies. So it's not through divorce or anything like that. Tanya actually has to die. And we find out that Greg and Quentin, which was the main guy that was sort of swooning like Miss Tanya around the Palacio and everything, actually has a photograph with Greg. So it turns out that they had a relationship in the past, and this is a reason that maybe Greg is trying to help this guy out now. So Tanya realizes all of this, she puts it all together, and that night she actually runs and grabs the bag that the guy who's going to kill her has, and inside of it she finds the rope, the duct tape, and the gun that they were going to use to kill her, and she locks herself in the bedroom, but eventually they find out, they burst in, and Tanya, in a fit of like, what am I going to do, like desperation and everything, shooting like crazy, like wild, and just starts killing everybody on board. We eventually see that she does kill Quentin, she does kill Nicolo and everybody else that's in the boat, and she tries to find a way to get out of the boat because of course they're in the middle of the sea, so there's a little boat that the guy who was going to kill her took, and she's like, how do I get out of this? And the only way of course is she has to jump, but she doesn't make it and she actually just falls, hits her head, and dies. And the creator of the show, Mike White, said this was the only way to take out Tanya. He didn't think that anybody else should have that sort of like privilege of sorts of taking her out, and she goes out in her own terms, and exactly what happened right there. So Greg is pretty much now going to get her money, and it seems that we might not just see the last of Greg just yet, as the creator Mike White said in the after show, that we will actually maybe see what happened to Greg, and that the whole thing with the yacht and everything and the boat is too suspicious to just leave alone. Somebody's going to be snooping around, somebody's going to find out what happened, and Greg is not off the hook just yet. So I thought that was pretty interesting, the way that this whole story was set up, and I did not expect Tanya to be the one to bite the bullet, but alas, she was. Portia, on the other hand, gets taken by Jack to the airport, and he just says, "Don't look back. These are powerful people. Just go on home. You're smart. Just do that." At the airport, we see Portia and Alby finally meet up, and I was just like, these two, they could have just like gone about, had their relationship at the hotel and everything, and it would have been peachy. Like, the whole Portia thing with Jack wouldn't have happened, and Alby wouldn't have lost the 50,000 and sort of been played and all of that. But hey, that's the both of them right now. They want to get each other's numbers, and they're gonna move on from this. So I thought that was interesting right there. We then had, of course, Ethan and Harper finally get their night in their bedroom, which everybody was waiting to happen, and we see that they're good. They're good now. Cameron and Daphne, of course, are good as well, and that's pretty much where we end everything. And Lucia and Mia actually end up the victors of everything. We see that Alessio was actually the doorman there, and it was sort of a good play that they were doing on Alby and his family to get this money. Mia, of course, has now taken over as the pianist in the hotel. Giuseppe is now fired, and we see that everybody that was local seems to be good now. Everybody, Lucia and Mia, seem to be going about Italy, having the time of their life now, and I think that's a very fitting end to everything that's happened here. And I'm curious to see where season 3 takes us. Like I said, the creator Mike White said that they are planning on doing, of course, a season 3 that's already been approved by HBO. And I would be definitely curious to see if Greg does return in that season 3, and what do we see from that. Because, like the creator said, this isn't the last of Greg we've seen, and we're definitely going to see him again. And I'm curious to see how or who will be snooping around that's going to find out what exactly happened to Tanya on that yacht, on that boat, and all of that. So it seems that the White Lotus is definitely setting up a little bit more continuity with its story, whereas opposed to the previous season, the only connecting tissue we had was just Jennifer Coolidge as Tanya. I'm interested to see if Jennifer Coolidge returns for season 3 as Tanya, maybe in flashbacks or something. Or, I have a theory about what could actually be going on, but I'll talk more about that pretty soon. So stay tuned for that video where I talk about my season 3 theories. I just wanted to expand more on episode 7 and my thoughts and my opinions. I thought the whole thing with Harper, Ethan, Daphne, and Cameron was definitely the most interesting of the whole season so far. And of course, because I think that the drama, the tension, and everything as it was building, and us not knowing exactly what was happening, what wasn't happening, really set that up pretty good. And I was excited to see the finale, like I said, for Cameron finally sticking up and sort of getting in Cameron's face like he had never done before. And I think Cameron sort of liked that as well, sort of respected Ethan a little bit more because of that, that he finally stood up to him and was like, "I'm not having none of your bullshit." So I thought that was an interesting aspect of it right there. But overall, like I said, I did not expect Tanya to be the one that was gonna die, and that was a complete left field when I saw her. I thought she was gonna make it on the boat, get out of there, and be good. And I was just like, okay, we're getting to the end of the episode and nobody's died yet. So I was like, it's gonna be Tanya once we got to that point. And it was so crazy. She took out everybody she could, though. That was something you gotta give Tanya props for, right? That she was able to go up against all of these people that were out to get her and ultimately come out on top. But overall, very good episode. Very excited to see what the White Lotus season 3 has for us. But anyways, that's gonna do it for me. We are running a giveaway right now. All you have to do to enter that is make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you comment below your favorite movie or TV show of 2022. This live will be put up as a video again if you want to check it out, and my discussion, all of that. We are also making a movie, and I have a video about that up right now on the channel. So go check that out and find ways to support us. I really would appreciate it. But as always, we're gonna do some more live streams. We might do another live stream for the White Lotus tonight. Talk a little bit more about it. I'm gonna watch the whole after show and a little bit of the interviews that Mike White did, and sort of get some more info. And we're gonna do some season 3 theories about what we could see and who we would want to see in the White Lotus. I'm voting right now for Brian Tyree Henry in it and Jenna Ortega, but we'll see what happens. Anyways, as always, that's gonna do it for me. I'll see all of you next time. Stay safe, stay positive.